Okay, thank you for joining us. This is the Deschutes County Board of Commissioners meeting, 1 p.m. Monday, March 31st, 2025. First item on the agenda is citizen input. So anybody that has anything not on the agenda, up to 3 minutes. So yeah, please join us. Yeah, you let me know.
This is a little less intimidating than March 19th meeting.
We try to make it welcoming either way.
Right. Okay. 2 minutes, 31 seconds on the cell phone. My name is Steve Bayer. I'm a resident of Deschutes County for 43 years. I currently live at 56200 Pine Mountain Road on property owned by Stephen and Clancy Roth. These comments will be in reference to the county's search for the new landfill site. I have attended many of the SWAC meetings as well as providing access to the ranch and information to the parametrics folks. Basis the March 19th meeting, Deschutes County has terminated negotiations with Hooker Creek for the purchase of the Moon Pit. It was the finalist in the selection at a price of $15 million for 440 acres. The Roth East property reasonably could be called the runner-up. I would encourage the commission to review the Roth East site prior to reconvening the SWAC committee. The Roths have offered the county, and this is new discovery, their entire holdings in the Milliken Pine Mountain area, approximately 3,800 acres for $5.5 million, as well as assisting with the termination of their U.S. Forest Service and BLM grazing permits. Additionally, a new path forward for acquiring water rights and drilling wells has been researched by Stephen Roth and a local certified water rights examiner named James Newton. This is a game changer and could solve the water availability issue. The virtues of the Roth property are many, perhaps the most being the ability to dig cells without blasting. The alluvial rock and dirt deposits are a huge resource and were determined in parametrics, a survey to be 400 feet deep. You can dig cells with a front end loader. In conclusion, I would ask the county commission to direct Jim Brownell to hold off on reconvening the search committee until this new proposal can be examined. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stephen.
Is there anyone else? So seeing none, item number 1, work session. So this is plan amendment and zone change for Bend Park and Recreation District. Work session in preparation for Wednesday.
Commissioner, before we get started, I have some handouts for you. We got a couple comments currently about the one if you have it in your hand. Good afternoon, Commissioners. For the record, Nathaniel Moore, Associate Planner with the Planning Commission. The item before us today is a work session to prepare for a public hearings Wednesday, April 2nd. The applicant, Bend Park and Recreation District, requests approval of a comprehensive plan amendment to change the designation of the subject property from agricultural and surface mining to rural residential exception area. The applicant also requests a corresponding zone change to rezone the property from exclusive farm use and surface mining to rural residential. A little about the property and the proposal. The 279-acre property is comprised of approximately 105 acres of surface mining zone and 174 acres of exclusive farm use zone. The applicant asked that Deschutes County change the plant designations and the zoning Because the subject property does not qualify as agricultural land under Oregon Administrative Rule definitions, and there are no longer active mining operations at the former surface mining site. The applicant submitted a soil study which determined that the property contains approximately 66% of land capability class 7 and 8 soils. According to the study, the property is predominantly comprised of soils that do not qualify as agricultural land. A little about the hearings officer review. A public hearing before a hearings officer was held on November 12th of 2024. 5 comments in opposition were received prior to the public hearing. 2 members of the public provided testimony in the hearing, 1 in opposition and 1 in support. The hearings officer weighed the evidence and testimony and recommended approval. This recommendation was mailed out on January 8th of 2025. 3 comments for the record have been received since the notice of the hearings officer recommendation was mailed, 2 in opposition and 1 in support. The goal of the work session today is to understand how we can best prepare the board for the hearing and what specific parts of the application that commissioners would like to know more about. Staff would also like to know the board preference and setting time limits for the applicant and or members of the public providing testimony. With that, we'd like to open it up to questions and or direction from the board.
Questions?
Question that may be more relevant to direct to the park district than to county staff. But this being a work session format, is it okay to dig into those?
I think so. And then, if, please, as a commissioners, I think what we could do is I can take note of those questions that you have, and I can, pass it along to the applicant and the representative as well. And they're joining us here today too, so they'll be the rest of your concerns.
So if I'm tracking correctly, a park is an eligible use for EFUs only, but the applicant is seeking rezone of that the EFU portion of this land to provide more flexibility for things that they want to do. I would like to know a little bit more about what their intentions are, or what they have planned. I don't know the history of the planning of this park, but if there's actually a master plan of some kind that's available, it would be great to understand, within that master plan, what kind of things are being proposed that you need this EFU to, or 10 reclassification. That's one kind of area of questioning. I would also be interested to understand what the history of the 18 acres of water rights are. And the staff memo said they had not been used, or been used. I'm interested, how an irrigation district, issued irrigation rights, and then just kind of allows them to sit for a substantial period, several decades before, circling back with the owner of those rights to that's what they're doing with them. And then would love to know what the park district intends to do with the water rights afterwards. I would assume that a park is going to require certain amount of water, whether you can use the irrigation district water rights for those purposes, or whether you need to extinguish those and get some other kind of water rights for park purposes. A lot of these things we wouldn't typically ask an applicant. The question of whether something is agricultural land or not is much narrower than kind of trying to understand how this application relates to the intended uses. But since this is a public entity, I feel like it's reasonable to ask for a little bit more information just to get a better understanding of what the intended purpose is. And the hearings officer talked about that, how as these lands are going to be used for this public purpose, there's, it's not that the bar is set a little lower, but there's a little bit more deference given to, you know, the arguments that are made by the applicant.
So can you give me clarity, is there an open record period now, so anything given to us can be put on kind of the record in front of the board, is that the idea?
Correct. I think the record is still.
Oh, it's still open, so we just think of it as one set of records from the hearing officer to us, is that what we?
Correct.
Okay, yeah, that helps. And then, yeah, I just saying some words around this, I think of that, you know, south, east side of town there, and the landfill is gonna be closed 6, 8, 10, 12 years from now. And I've always said that, you know, someday we'll be running the dogs and throwing a Frisbee out there. So just a sense of place. It's close to a place that could be recreational value also. So just along the lines of vision, you know, from the park district point of view, it'd be interesting to see if there's any vision that can be shared at this point in time. Yeah, I think I'll just leave it at that.
And yet, my question is, it said, according to the first page of or second page of your memo, that the applicant intends to transfer the water rights to tax lot 300. Well, do we know what tax lot 300 is?
Yes.
I mean, because this is all in one big square or whatever. This,
Yeah.
yes, this property.
So the location map just gives the subject property, tax lot 300 is the property which is just adjacent to that property to the southeast.
Inside the
And
knowledge.
that's also owned by Benton Park and Recreation District.
Okay, so they have permission then from Arnold to transfer it? They've already, you know, gotten that done?
Sure, I can certainly highlight that question to the applicant, have them respond to it during the hearing.
Then it looks like there's recent farming on that lot 300 also, so maybe understanding the status of that, just is the intention of the water to use it for forage growth or just sense again. So as I say, this is a hearings officer recommendation required to go in front of the Board of Commissioners, so it's not approval yet, it's just a recommendation for approval. And then for applicant, you know, 20 minutes has been a number in the past. I don't know that, you know, how we be flexible, that that's not, if that's tight. And then 10 minutes for agencies and how we can join, it's been 3 minutes for other testimony.
Okay, got it.
And I didn't have anything else jumping out of it, I was able to do it.
Okay.
Oh, any other questions? Get into it on Wednesday.
Thank you, Commissioners. We'll plan accordingly.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nathan.
Item number 2, acceptance of Central Oregon Health Council Behavioral Health. Let's see, it's right. I need to take the money somewhere.
Commissioners, my name is Trevor Stevens, Director. I'm the Business Manager for Community Justice. And we're here today to seek your approval to accept an award from the Central Oregon Health Council. And it's for the Behavioral Health Savings Grant. We did, just want to apologize, we did not come back and audibly applied and ask for permission to apply for this grant. It was very similar to another grant we'd applied for, and we just got lost in the scheme of things, but we apologize for that error on our part, and we'll definitely make sure we don't do that again. We did ask for originally a request for $170,000, and basically that request was to just support services that provides from our juvenile department, basically looking at therapy services for justice-involved youth, specifically focusing on female youth. We don't have any cognitive behavioral therapy, which is a therapy that really focuses on criminal thinking. We don't have specific services that we provide for female youth from our services that we provide. We do that for male youth. Generally, we have a lot more male youth, so that's why we focus on that side of things. But we're moving towards being able to also provide a contract there to kind of support those services for female specific youth. We're also looking at mentoring programs for youth on supervision. We currently do some of this with our detention facility. We're looking at expansion of that program to youth that are actively being supervised in our community. And then just consultation services to help us develop some of those programs. And just because of capacity reasons, looking at using those individuals who are more experts in those areas to kind of design those programs with us to kind of help move them forward. Our original grant request was $170. We've been approved for $127,500. And so based on that, we'll make adjustments as necessary, but we believe we can still actively move forward with the programs with that amount. A lot of these services will complement our design of our in-house SUD program that will exclusively provide services for youth on supervision in Deschutes County. And it'd just be important to have these services just to kind of supplement those services that we are providing. A lot of them will support community-based organizations, the Dispersed Light and other community organizations that are providing recovery mentor services in our community. And our goal is that hopefully we can use some of these funds to also get us to a point where we're able to bill OHP and Medicare and Medicaid for some of these services that we provide directly. I'm here to answer any specific questions. But the award is $127,500. The majority of the funds won't be spent until FY 2026, and no new FTE will be added with any of these funds.
Do you think it'll be the majority of the year or half a year, or, you know, what kind of, how much resources does this give? What kind of a runway?
For some of those programs, it'll actually support almost the entire fiscal year. Yeah.
And then I attended a cognitive session years ago when I first got started, so I understand the, you know, the concept, and I was in the room with adults going through it. You really just take a moment. So why did I come to that conclusion and make, you know, do this risky behavior or illegal activity? So it's really an interesting process. And then also for the grants, remember we used to have our annual financial report. We were dinged for not keeping track of what grants are coming in and going out. So, you know, you're apologizing, but we're here to document the grant that we have, making sure we're following up on the requirements of the grant and reporting on it correctly, appropriately at the end of the year. So it's really just that in this.
The questions was about within the whole SUD program and juvenile justice and community justice. I know that we're working towards building up, you know, Medicare or Medicaid reimbursable services, and then having the administrative systems to be able to do that. And then I read in here that these are the kinds of services that aren't Medicaid reimbursable anyway. But can you talk a little bit just about the relationship between those things? So, you know, what are the programs that are being built up that are going to be Medicaid reimbursable, and then how does this enhance or complement those?
Yeah, so the programs that can build Medicare and Medicaid for are generally like things like functional family therapy, where it's actually the clinician providing direct service to the individual. For supportive services such as like mentoring and those aspects, we're not providing those direct services. And so unless that provider is qualified or accepted through OHP and Medicaid to bill for those services, they're not able to bill for those services. For example, First Light is not a Medicare and Medicaid billable service because they do not currently have a recognition through OHP or OHA to bill for those services. And then the restorative accountability program is more of an accountability program working with youth. So it's not a direct service being provided by clinicians. So I think that's just not a billable service just because it's of what it is being provided. It's not technically a clinical service. Because of our in-house behavioral health unit, some of those services are actually clinical services, and those are the services that we can bill directly for. So anything that kind of falls out of that room of a clinical service, then we're not able to bill for.
And I do have a compliment for Deschutes County. I was talking with one of the commissioners from Lane County this morning. His adopted son was here, came over from Lane County to Deschutes County and was involved with the, Bethlehem Inn.
Oh, wow.
And then he had to leave it for a while. It was like that 30-day period of transitioning. Unfortunately, the young man committed suicide at that time. But the commissioner had said how impressed he was with the services here in Deschutes. So, and I don't know if you saw the news, but there was a foster child who just committed suicide. And, it was, I believe it was here in Oregon, because I know for a while we were sending them to Iowa or something. I mean, it's, there's a lot of youth out there that we really have to put our arms around. So I'm glad that you are addressing women or young women in this case. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Is there a motion for approval?
I move approval of document number 2025-331, accepting the behavioral health savings investment grant from Central Oregon Health Council.
Second. Any other discussion? Seeing that, Commissioner Commissioner Darris, I'm looking at you.
Okay, yes,
Commissioner J, yes, and Chair votes yes.
it is Monday.
I totally. Item number 3, county college program for 2020.
Afternoon, Kim Catcher, Public Information Officer for the record. I just wanted to come before you today and seek your feedback and direction on improvements to my college. We did survey, which you have in front of you there, and 16 of our 21 participants responded. And we got a lot of positive feedback. There's comments in there that you see that I thought were nice and helpful. 2 of the things that were suggested were to expand the program from 10 weeks to 12 weeks. 56% of the recipients, or not recipients, people who
Respondents.
respondents, that's the word I was looking for, wanted the 12 weeks, or thought it was a good idea, and 43%, about 10 weeks was fine. Then there was another suggestion, I think even the last session that y'all were present in, someone suggested videotaping presentations. So I made that a question, and 83% of people said that they would be willing to have homework, watch the presentation ahead of time. That would give them more time to participate, ask questions. Maybe it's an opportunity for some more interactive program kind of things. Some of the respondents, one of the questions, which programs, which sessions do they enjoy the most? And it seems the ones that were interactive, road, elections, they really enjoyed those more. So seeking your feedback.
So would the idea be you literally show them the presentation in advance and then you give them the exact same presentation afterwards?
No, the idea would be they would watch the presentation and then get whatever questions they have from that. So it would pretty
You
much
could just walk in and into the Q and A.
into the Q and A, yeah. And say, the things that they're learning, they have time to kind of process that and then figure out what more they want to know. So it just expands on the session.
How does that interact with the question of 10 weeks versus 12 weeks? I mean, if you're delivering a bunch of content through homework outside of the sessions, then do you need to go to 12 sessions or?
Well, the sessions at 10 weeks, there would be 3 to 4 departments on one day. So if you're extending it out a little bit, then they're not watching as many and they have more time.
They get more
to
time
do
with
it.
each department.
And, like health services had its own session, but it was the last day before we did the graduation. And it's such a big program that.
Didn't even get started
we
hardly,
did-
yeah.
Right, it's hard to get it all in there, so. Just wanted to know if you have any direction, if you'd like.
So what does videotape presentations look like? Is that a pretty big production?
It doesn't have to be.
Like, yeah.
We've talked about, Eric and I have talked about this, and we were thinking it would be even as simple as having a team meeting, having between me and the presenters, and they would, share their screen and do the presentation there. I think people are used to watching, presentations that way. So it could be that simple.
Has department heads kind of heard about this or thought about it, or we're starting to set direction here today, or what's?
We just mentioned it, that is something we were going to touch base with the commissioners, at the last department meeting last week. So they're aware that it's up for consideration, but
Yeah,
no
so we're-
decisions have been made at this point.
I said direction. When I look at the big picture here, I'm thinking maybe not extending it to 12 weeks, but setting up a little video so it can be more engaging as you step in the door. So the domain we're talking about, that it's a department, that there's the services that are delivered, and then you'll be starting off walking instead of
Having
Crawling, yeah.
a little bit of knowledge before you walk in and maybe asking more thoughtful questions. There's also, again, like I said, an opportunity to do a little bit more. Maybe there's time for some icebreakers. So the interaction between the group, because it was so tightly scheduled, there wasn't a whole lot of interaction between the people participating. And some people have mentioned that they would enjoy to have that opportunity to do a little bit more.
Can you remind us again, or maybe again, what percentage of the survey respondents said they would be willing to watch the video in advance?
83%.
83%.
Yeah, I was surprised.
One question that I have is if the presentations are put into video format and then, they're readily available, will people want to skip sessions and still get credit for? Because there is you have to attend a certain number of the sessions in order to,
Right,
graduate county college, right?
right.
So, I mean, do we run the hazard of more people saying, I can't make it that week, but I still want to graduate from county
Well, I
college?
think that we could say, and I'm sorry, I'm looking at my thing, it's 81%, I have the number wrong. I think we could still hold the people have to be present. 7 of the 10 sessions. But this is an opportunity for the people who do miss the session,
Not to completely miss the content.
not to completely.
Well, and a few years back, we were asking ourselves, do we even want to do this anymore? It was kind of a dicey time. I think, knowing that we do provide a lot of services and the people that do it really appreciate it. Looking for that geographic representation of people that are interested in joining, and then hopefully, having a cohort of people that you've done it with. So, I mean, there's a lot of upsides to this too.
We haven't even marketed it.
Oh,
this
interesting.
year, and we
Okay.
already have 14 people who have applied.
Yeah, so people are following it. Oh, good.
Yeah,
Okay, good.
so, and some of them were, their friend just graduated from
Yeah.
last year and suddenly they wanna participate as well.
And to be honest, did you notice who needs to improve? Us. And
The board
legal.
of commissioners
and
got
district-
bad
Yeah.
marks.
Yes,
But
5 people.
But what that was about is that it just wasn't interactive.
Yeah.
I mean, we all learn.
And you don't even get warmed up within an hour, especially with a group of people.
Right.
But we're right there at the top and the bottom.
But
So-
there's opportunities to come up with a fun,
So videos kind of put the service level, getting context, the topic, what we do, why we do it,
right.
and then you're kind of off a little quicker as soon as you get in the room again.
So if we actually have 22 departments in the county, we could have 11 weeks, and then every department would have.
That's a numbers person right there.
Well, I just go on, if that's really,
There you go.
and maybe not quite so long, but they can watch the video beforehand and have internet interaction. But yeah, it is great to see what they loved and,
Yeah.
what was the percentage of the respondents who said 12 instead of 10 again?
Let me look,
It was
because I have
international,
another
yeah.
wrong the last time, but I think it's,
It was, I think,
56
pretty
to
high.
43. Yeah, 43 said 10, to keep it at 10 weeks, and 56% said extended to 12. But
So we
again, I
can make
think that's
everybody happy and go to 11.
meet in the middle.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, and as I say, I mean, the only reason I'd be hesitant to go to 12 is there's overhead. You know, it's off hours work for whoever's gonna be attending, you know, the management, and then whoever else. So that's the only reason I'm thinking to add that next week. It's just a little bit much more. But 11 does sound like a good number. Divided by 2.
Lucky 11.
Yeah, I mean, looking at some of the bundlings or pairings that we did, I mean, Justice Court and Paranex really got nothing to do with each other. So
It
I can
was
see, I can
location
see,
related. Yeah.
I can see the value in spreading it out a little bit more over 11 weeks or 12.
I think when I did it, we went to the fair. I don't believe we did anything else that evening. So it was just at the fair.
It's interesting to see how it's evolved. The sessions were 3 to 3.5 hours, and that just got to be really long for the attendees. So this last year, we went to the much shorter time, but then we could really feel how compressed it was. And I had a family member, and we have a former student in here right now with us as well. And I think everybody felt like, oh my gosh, we're trying to cover too much too fast, and there's not enough time for interaction. So this is just kind of the next step. And
Yeah.
does this avenue work? It worked well for everybody, given the amount of time, the time of day, the preparation for each meeting. So it's an interesting concept to explore.
What I know is to say, I guess I haven't had direct feedback from some of the departments, but I mean, just getting the word out and having people understand what we're doing and how we're doing it, how it's funded, it's so valuable for all parties too, so.
Well, and I'm sure you've all heard, I heard a lot from people that they don't realize what county government really, how much county government really impacts their lives until they, you know, do something like this.
After these videos are recorded, would we make them more broadly available? I mean,
We
so
could, there's
people
an
can get the
opportunity for that
benefits
as
of
well.
learning about,
Sure.
you know, the community development department without having, you know, without going to county.
Right. Yeah, that would be great. And community development did a really good program last year. They took RV rentals. What are RV rentals?
The the
Yes,
rental
or I
dwellings.
was just either that or it was ADUs, but they worked it through every part of
That's just-
community
yeah.
development, so you kind of got a real sense of how it operates.
So it sounds like there's support for 11 and probably not even opposition to 12 weeks. As I say, I was just hesitant to think we're gonna spread it out so far, but if that works. And then support for videotapes of the introduction topics.
Okay.
Video.
So I
Probably not tape, so video or some sort. Yeah.
I got it. So, all right, so I will then move forward and, work with the department heads to do this, and then we'll probably promote it, in end of June. Have people start applying in July and then start again in August.
So did we have a similar survey last year?
I think so. There was something. Yes, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yes, there was. And what was the rating?
Whitney did something. We'll look.
Okay. I mean, I just was gonna compare it to see.
Yeah, I can,
We're always trying to find the perfect situation for it.
Right,
And I think
right.
it's really important to have it.
yeah, I can look for it in the old files and find it for you. Yeah, and there was some feedback that I came across that was why we changed the time.
Yes.
To earlier, and everyone, both the participants and the departments were happy that, you know, it was at the end of the day, but not heading into family time too much. So,
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kim.
Item number 4, process to create county commission districts.
Great, commissioners, I'll just briefly kick it off. As the board's aware, and Susan's aware, ballot measure 9 that 173 passed in November, it was passed November of 2024, which expands county commissioners to a 5-seat board. After that meeting, the board briefly discussed at a board meeting in November, and then again, if I recall correctly, we discussed it briefly at the retreat, an interest in considering creating districts for the 5 commissioners. So that's the process we aim to begin today to explore that with you. And Jen Patterson, our strategic initiatives manager, has really been leading this effort. Of course, our county clerk, Steve Dennison, was instrumental and not listed here, but we can't do any of this without our legal counsel and Dave Doyle and Kim Riley here that help guide us every step of the way. So commissioners, with that, I'll turn it over to Jen to take it from here.
Great. I was just introduced, but the record, Jen Patterson, Strategic Initiatives Manager. I have the PowerPoint pulled up and logged into the Zoom, Brenda. Okay, and then I just go to my screen, I believe. Do this. I'm trying to get the full presentation view. Oh, there we go. There we go. Okay. So here today to talk about or starting the conversation for the process for developing district maps. And there were a couple of key questions we had at the onset that kind of might guide the conversation further along. There's a lot of considerations. We wanted to start with the key considerations of if we are moving forward with this process happening in the 2026 election year, do we want that to occur in the May 2026 or the November 2026 election? And I'll just jump forward a couple of slides just to give you a quick timeline of if we did it on May 2026, we basically need to start now and work our way towards the date of when we need to get it to the clerk's office for the final maps approval. So that's where we're starting with the conversation, unless the commissioners would like to start with a different point of the topic to discussion.
I was kind of thought of it as November, just as a, I don't know, not really based on anything, but just, the point of maybe maximum people paying attention to the topic and voting at that point in time. That was really what I was starting with. But that was kind of set direction to the time frame of what we do starting now.
I guess I would make an argument for starting with the question of whether we want to do 5 districts or 4 districts and 1 at-large chair. And the reason I would suggest thinking about starting with that question is the 2006 district maps that were put into a ballot measure back in the day. They look fairly reasonable to me. I mean, I would want to know, we would definitely want to go back and, basically put current populations in each of those precincts to know how that map is off at this point, because I'm pretty sure it's not, the proportions of population aren't perfectly the same as they were then. But I mean, if those maps need a minor amount of revision based on population to be considered as a possibility, that could shortcut a lot of the work here, and we could just float that map, basically slightly modified, updated for current populations, to the public. Not that, not that I'm not open to different maps, but that would be one way of, this process actually going very, fast, like short circuiting the process. Update the 2006 map for population, minor changes to the way that the districts are drawn, and then float that. If we were interested in a five district model as opposed to a 4 district plus an at-large chair model. So that's what backs me up to that kind of being first order kind of question. That's just
So we did do a little bit of that exercise.
Yeah.
Internally, working with IT and Steve. So there were some drastic population changes in some of the districts. So there would need to be some detailed work done on those maps. Some districts were heavily more skewed in population than others from the 2006 map. And then
a lot.
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot.
Okay.
I think, like,
Well, precincts have been redrawn.
and that was the other
Yes.
thing, is that the
Because I'm
precincts
reading
have
the
been
rules.
withdrawn. Yeah, and one of the considerations that Steve has been coaching me on is that it behooves, it's advantageous to have the precincts remain whole. And so,
Yeah.
we played around a little bit with that and didn't get to a solid starting point on those maps from 2006. I think that they could still be used, but it would need teamwork to get those maps to a place that would be a semi-decent equal population as well as within whole precincts.
General concept was northwest, northeast, south, and then 2 in Bend, though, correct? I mean, that's what it was.
I'd have to look into it again.
Is that what you're envisioning? Commissioner Chang? I think,
Well,
I'm just thinking back, generally, that's what it was.
It's not necessarily the way that I would do it if I was starting from scratch, but I know that people put a lot of thought into that process back in the day, and so that's why I thought it would be at least a reasonable starting point for discussion.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think you can start with it, but of course, what we have to do is population, and you have to look about forecasting, and according to, the applicability that state you're gonna have to pull in. I think that's gonna be really critical, just, all of our different
Yeah.
sizes.
Another consideration is, are we looking at census data and population or voter rolls? It should be similar, but if we're talking population, of course, it's not necessarily eligible voters, it's just people.
Do we have the total population by precincts as well as registered voters by precinct?
Yes.
And so we did, some of these questions that are coming up right now are on the 3rd and 4th page of the slide, but I just popped it up here. Decisions, there's a lot of decisions to be made in this process, but try to kind of narrow the focus of those. And so if it was to go to a committee, some of these decisions are these going to first be determined by the board? Or if you're going to go to a committee map drawing process, are you going to have the committee make some of those decisions? And those include the 5 districts or 4, 1 at large, or we put in their map, district numbering. I guess it's not in this slide, but one of the questions was the population count. Do you want it to be, voter population or total population? So there's a lot of decisions to be made within that process, and some of the considerations are those decisions going to be made here and then given to the committee as a directive, or is the committee going to lead some of these if you go through the committee route?
We're just starting to put direction to it today, and I've already learned more thinking about, registered voters or population per se. One of the things is, what about a civic assembly? Kind of seems like a great tool for an interesting discussion here. Just like we already had our civic assembly process for youth homeless, and that was kind of picking a problem and trying to get information around it. This could be very engaging for a group of citizens, and then the process of application and finding some folks that respond to the balanced outreach that happens, really can be interesting. Because I mean, every one of these things to debate, they're all interesting questions. I'm not, locked down on any of this yet. I guess one very specific question though. So no matter what we do here, the Board of Commissioners to put it on the ballot, is that what we're talking about here? So it's either we come up with something, a committee comes up with something, but it comes through the three of us to get on the ballot.
And when, which ballot?
Yeah, and May or November, yeah.
We put it's a little bit in the timeline there. But we, as you can see, if we went for the May 2026 election, they're due to the clerk's office by February 27th. So we've built in a lot of buffer there for the commissioner deliberation and adoption in case, the committee went longer or there was, things come up. So we put in about a 4 to 5 week process there for the commissioner deliberation to take a look at it. But yeah, that's where it ultimately lands.
Yep.
With the commissioners and then go to the ballot. And, talking with Dave too, I think in that process somewhere, there's a public hearing process before it goes officially to the ballot.
And then at one point, I think there was thought or conclusion that November was the only opportunity, but now we determined that it can go to the May election. I mean, there's both of those options. Those are regularly scheduled general elections.
And primary.
Oh yeah, terminology, but yeah, I mean, they're both elections for everybody, whatever. Yeah.
So Steve, this black and white from the state says for districts to be of equal population, but that doesn't say voter population or
That-
people population.
Correct. That doesn't specify right there, and that directive came from, that was regarding more specifically the redistricting process that came out of the 2020 census. So that was when we were applying those congressional House and Senate district lines. A similar process can be followed for this, but that directive was specific to redrawing district lines. But I think Jen has witnessed in other jurisdictions that same methodology being applied.
The most recent example would be the Portland re-government process, and they use that directive as well. But in the examples that I pulled from, I think I pulled from 4 examples throughout the state of redistricting or mapping or creating districts or creating new council seats. Everyone referenced or had those bullet points, and there was a starting point for kind of the framework of how the maps were being drawn. But there is room for interpretation on those bullet points as well.
Thank you.
To go back to our timeline options again. So a primary election or a general election are eligible, but if we wanted to consider 2027, there's not a election date in 2027 that is eligible.
I believe November of 27,
Well,
but that would be too late to apply, yeah.
Because if you wait until November 2027, the folks running for office in 2028 have already begun
Yeah,
the process
they
by
may have
filing.
filed by September, right?
So 2027 really is not an option.
It just puts you into the next commissioner election cycle.
So it is possible then to be in May. It might be a little tight because we have to determine the selection process for it if we use the committee. But then we do have months of committee meetings. So
So
it does,
we feel like the May 2026 is a doable timeline if some decisions are made within the next couple of weeks here. If you want to go to a committee, specifically if you want to go to a committee and how you want that committee selection process to take place. And that, I think that would give staff ample time. I think from my time frame there, it's thinking, first committee meeting, June 15th is kind of the deadline of where we need to set internally to be able to give enough room for the committees to meet. And historically in previous examples throughout the state, they usually have a fairly aggressive committee schedule over that length of period of time. But June 15th would probably be when we want the committee to start meeting, realizing that we're in the summertime too. So availability, we want to roll that into the fall time a little bit for availability purposes. But then if you do a committee formation, we're basically April right now. So that's 2.5 months. And an application, if you go an application process, but you want to do proper notification.
Yeah, well, I guess I'm not opposed to May. I was just always thinking November. So, this is a starting point. If it doesn't gel, then we got November as the backup too.
It's always good to have a backup.
Well, as I say, my goal for the residents and the electors of Deschutes County is just to be up to speed on the big picture, because there's many people I talk to. Yep, I voted for, the next commissioners, and it's gonna be great to have my commissioner. And then the next question is, we're not by districts, as you take a step. So a lot of people just didn't even pay attention to it. So as I say, right or wrong, this is an opportunity just for vision and understanding, especially through this committee process for the people that can be involved. So that's show I do support a committee.
So the range is what, 7 to 15 has been recommended?
That's what I've seen historically in the 4 to 5 districts or the 4 to 5 examples I saw. Most of them are county redistricting opportunities, and then I also looked at the most recent Portland City Council's re-government process. So the smallest committee range I saw was 17 and up to 15, and then probably recommend doing an odd number as we do some voting processes along the way.
Think so.
Well, as I say, any direction that you're seeing, Commissioner Adair?
No, I just, I
Do you
think
support
a
the
blue
committee?
ribbon committee,
Yeah,
that's,
committee.
I've been really clear. I think that's great. We've heard from people what they consider. The population I do want to put for the record is, I think Deschutes County is like 209,000 people. Somebody today thought it was 250,000. So, that, isn't that our population today? Like 209,000, give or take, maybe 1,000.
163,000 registered voters. I
There is a-
can say that, but yeah, I don't know. the
Plus the
population.
You don't know the
Yeah.
population, no?
And about 210,000.
Yeah, they roughly run there.
Okay, so, and then 7 to 15 on a committee, I think is important. That's not too unwieldy. They can get the job done, and I think they're gonna have to work with you all in order to get those numbers. I mean, there's some things that are probably gonna just fall in place, numbers wise, and then other things are gonna, take a little bit of looking at, because you hope to make something that's gonna be, make sense in like 8 years, or, yeah, even 4 years.
Well, my input on these questions are, I think it would be more appropriate for the 5 commissioners that'll be seated in 2027 to be guiding this process than in these 3, but I'm gonna be outvoted on that. And so on the May or November question, I don't think it matters that much. I think I don't think that 3 commissioners would do a very good job of creating district maps. So a committee has a better chance of doing a good job, and but it all depends on the criteria we use to build the committee. So see us putting together a committee that didn't work that very well. It didn't produce very fair maps. And I could see us assembling a great committee that did a good job too. So the devil will be in the details on that.
Well, I have faith that between the feedback from Jen and from Steve, that, it will be, it'll be a great opportunity. It's complicated, and yet I feel like the committee will really solidify the public and our transparency on setting it up. So I think that's important.
Is there any support for talking about civic assembly, just for analysis to see if that makes sense?
I don't think it's the, you look at the way that this citizens assembly that just occurred worked. It produced a number of recommendations addressing a community-wide problem. This process is trying to get us to one solution. And you don't have you don't have the room to say, well, you should be working on the foster care system and you should be working on, facilities for people to, for young people to go to. The citizens assembly can look at a big, complicated problem and come up with a whole bunch of solutions that might work as a bundle or, a set of recommendations. And this is driving towards one answer. I don't think it's really the right format. I mean, if you want to take some of the principles of how the Citizens Assembly was formed, right? Kind of we want people from across the community geographically, demographic spread, et cetera, like take some of those concepts that were used to try to create a representative citizens assembly to build our committee. Like we could do that, and I think that's valuable. I don't think it's necessarily the right format of a process to drive to a single decision.
So as I say, it's just a starting point for me. I just know that there's a tool. We just saw the process work. Now we just happen to be looking for a committee. So I think maybe we have that conversation. So that's really, it's early and it'd be just a great opportunity to communicate about, hey, well, how would this work? And yeah, I mean, if it's just a selection process, that may be valuable.
Yeah, I mean, you want to talk about community engagement processes that do good things. We've also just seen, in the last few years, 3 of our cities have, 2 of our cities and one kind of broader region do a visioning process. Newberry Partnership, Vision Bend, Sisters. I mean, that's another kind of way of engaging a lot of people in a process, but it's again, it's not driving towards like, this is the one answer. It's, here's a whole bunch of things that we need to work on and we need to fire on all cylinders. So that just, I think I would split it up in those 2 ways. There's, the kind of the principles that were used for composing the Citizens Assembly. And I think, yeah, those might be very useful, guideposts for putting together a committee like this. And then there's actually kind of what the process is trying to produce out the other end.
I support a vote. Just do a little bit of homework on Citizen Assembly to create more committee.
I don't really think that's what works here. Honestly, I'm looking at what they're suggesting on the committee selection. And I think, that, makes sense. How do we get that committee? And yes, it's just very specific what we need to have done. We need to have districts in our county. Got to be fair districts, geographical districts, precinct districts. There's some things that should be accounted for.
And these are just some starting point. Not the final, all the options on the table, but these are some strong starting points of examples that have worked throughout the state. I can talk through them, or I know you guys have them in front of you as well.
Yes, we can read this one easier than that one.
These are options.
These are options, including the catch-all other at the end there.
For the hybrid process where we have some appointments, combination.
So yeah, you're looking for a little bit more direction to this today, do you think?
A little bit on the committee, so I guess the question is, if we're going May, then a little bit more behind the, how do we want to start to proceed on the committee?
Okay, so yeah, if we're committing to May, as I say, I don't know that there's any resistance to that. And we're going to a committee, now we're at the step of how we're gonna do it.
Right, because I think we would want to do proper notification if there is an application process. And so we're 2.5 months out if we go May from when the committee is gonna need to start meeting. Notify of an application process if there is one. And determine a criteria. Some of these things, like on how are those applications going to be reviewed and who's going to review them and score them, we can determine later, but if, you know, as we're going through the application process, but if there's an application process, well, you know, I can bring it back another week, but we don't have a whole lot of extra wiggle room there for the May election.
I think the key is what we wanted to do today is to understand the timeline. And then if we understand that the board is interested in a committee of any type, it's helpful to just introduce the topic so that's on your radar. And then we can come back in a couple of weeks. I mean, it's a
She's
week.
saying like 1 week or two.
Well, it would take us a week to pull it together and then it would be the agenda for the following week. So it is, I mean,
So 2 weeks.
So we could
probably pull this information together, right? For us to come up with some options and then to get some clarity from the board and, okay, so what might that committee look like? So we can initiate either, if it's an application process, that we begin that process. If it's
Right.
commissioner appointments or city council appointments or whatever the case may be, we can begin those processes. We can also begin to think about what is the committee's charge? Is it 5 districts? Is it 4 and 1? What authority do they have? What direction does the board want to give? We really wanted to introduce a lot of these topics for the board today for you to think about, because there's a lot that we're learning very, very quickly about how this all comes together, and when, for us to meet the target deadline be in May or November. Is that, Cap, is that?
Yes, I think we're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Guidance on how you want that committee selection process to take place today, then we can pull together. Within that process, I think in any of these categories, there can be multiple options, or combinations thereof. But if we have guidance on how you want to start thinking about that committee selection process today, then we can come back. And then again, all those other questions can take place over, I think, even the next 4 to 6 weeks before the committee is formed of, is this gonna land within the committee, or is this gonna land from the commissioners and be as a guidance for the committee to use? Those kind of bigger ideas and things to flesh out don't need to really take place today, but it's definitely a starting point to start thinking about going forward and even some of these things about the committee process and committee consideration, we can continue to have those conversations, but guidance on does sound like the committee is, from what I'm hearing.
We already made some decisions
Yes.
today, yeah.
The majority of them, or all 3 of the board
Yeah.
members, sound like that's the avenue they want to go down. Maybe I'm hearing May 26th or November 26th. So if it's November 26th, we can definitely come back in another couple of weeks on like the committee selection process. If it's May 26th, I would ask for some guidance on what we're thinking of committee selection process, so we can come back with more detail in a quicker timeframe.
Well, as I say, seeing that civic assembly and understanding how that was truly just a kind of a random invitation response and then engagement process. I really support that. So after that, because, all the other options are gonna be us, arm wrestling or pulling straws or just 2 to 1, or I don't know what, so.
I do have a question, Dave. What if the voters, we get the districts done, it goes on the ballot, let's say May 26th. What if the voters vote no? Then it just reverts back?
At large.
Okay, everybody will be at large. So definitely if you want your district, then you would want to support it.
Yeah, I mean, if people want districts, we use them to do a really good job of drawing fair maps that the voters are gonna accept.
Fair.
So as I say, I think of it as northwest, northeast, south, balance with the population, and Bend being split 2. And that's what I think was in 2006. And you're saying if you were to do it, you'd do it better. What, do you have something else specifically?
I didn't say better, I'd say, I would start differently. I mean, I think it has to start in the population data. I would guess that at this point, if half the population of Deschutes County lives inside the city of Bend, you're not gonna be able to just squeeze all of Bend into 2 districts.
Well, yeah, so the district isn't gonna be coterminous with the perimeter of the city of Bend. I would agree with that. I mean, there's no reason it would have to be. It would just be population balanced. So really, it's just, are we going north and south or east and west? for the city of Benton, or diagonal for some reason. So, you know, generally, how do you start figuring out the precincts? Which may be the most substantive item.
Which probably leaves it more for the committee.
There you go.
Yeah, I would picture, you know, if it's not as easy as just take the 2006 map and tweak it a little bit, then I think you would want to start with a precinct map, population numbers, and, you know, start playing with the different combinations.
Well, so are you supportive of at least bring this back and seeing what, that civic assembly, you know, sortation process might look like as a starting point, just as an option?
So I think what I hear you saying is that you like the
I mean,
citizens
like-
assembly application and then very random selection process.
Well, the whole sortation was random to start with,
Yeah.
plus people that responded.
Yeah, I mean, they had people fill niches, you know, like certain kind of.
Yeah.
Niches, but then, you know, which bundle of representative, people got selected to be the citizens assembly, that was a random
Random,
process.
yeah.
But
Yeah,
which would answer the question, you know, how are applications graded or selected? The, you know, sortition and then random selection. I think that's, that there's some advantages and benefits to that process. I think the local appointments process, if we came up with the right, you know, who are all the entities that get to, you know, that get to advance someone or appoint someone? You know, if we came up with an appropriate set of selectors, essentially appointers, then that could be a good process as well.
so as I said, I'd like to, you know, get a little bit more information and not select a process right now, but be ready to do that when we get together.
Can we give staff, can we narrow the options for staff? I mean, if those are two options. If the next time we talk about this, we're only looking at those two options more fleshed out, then that's kinder to staff and advances us a little bit farther than just saying, we want to keep talking about all of these.
So, yeah, let's say, do we think of that application process? You know, sub box over there is random selection process of the sortation that we've seen. It's kind of good that we've seen it once now. So that's one of the options. And then, yeah, any other thoughts? So then you're talking about a hybrid process. What other box are we looking
I
at?
think the local appointment.
Local appointments.
Depending on who we choose gets to appoint somebody.
So as soon as we go down that path, it's gonna get real interesting. We'll try to,
I mean, one of my questions about that process is, are there any examples, you know, from recent years that we could look at how someone else has done it and say, that's pretty good, and maybe just tweak it in this way, to ensure so-and-so gets represented.
Don't we have 60 precincts in
50.
50? Okay, so 50 precincts, so we wanted 15 people on the committee just to make sure that it's fair and balanced somehow, you know.
Keep in mind, so basic lines are, precinct, registration or population totals vary significantly.
They do.
Yeah, they're, you know,
I
precinct
was
10,
thinking
for
that they might
instance,
be the same.
Precinct 10 is very, very, very small, and that's a result of the redistricting lines that were drawn, as a result of 2020.
Okay, so that.
So yeah, so the precinct totals can help get you there, but you would need to group them somehow.
I mean, the registered voters within a precinct, there's some that have over 10,000, right?
No, but some are getting closer. 10,000 is the statutory limit. Growing quite a bit.
So maybe 8 or 9,000.
Yes.
And then there's some that have like a few hundred.
Or 50
Okay,
brothers.
I know, I was thinking, I wrote down brothers because I was writing down all the cities and I wrote down.
Dave,
One option you have, how you're gonna populate the committee to draw from by analogy would be if you were creating a charter committee. Statute calls out how those folks are identified. And so you could borrow from that. The state representatives get to identify someone, the political parties get to identify someone. The idea is that it's a little more arm's length, that it's not quite as much home cooking. And, again, that's a possibility for how you populate that.
So
Oh.
do we basically look at kind of the formula for a charter committee and use that for a local
It
appointment?
would fit under that, yeah, absolutely.
It's, last.
That'd be
Yeah, Steve suggested that, so we added that in under the other, the state charter committee process.
Oh, it's clear over on the right side then.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was another option added on.
but you can read that middle one, it's kind of that same intention, local appointments by parsing it off to players.
Yeah,
groups.
if you're looking for that roadmap and something to parallel,
Yeah.
it's, it's very clear in that statute.
That'd be interesting to see.
There you go. So do we think of that as 2 options or 3 options?
Well,
Is that
I mean,
kind of
the
the same thing we're
local
thinking?
appointments, if there is an example, some other example of how some county or city or whoever has done a local appointments process, come up with their formula. That'd be interesting to see as well.
So they,
I mean, how did they do congressional districts? Well, I guess the congressional districts really differently in different places, right? But
Let's not go there.
how do they do congressional districts in places where they do it well?
Balance of the populace.
By committee, not the legislature.
But how do they, I mean, what kind of formula do they use to put together that committee?
I think it's gonna be very similar to that over essence.
That chart slide?
Yeah, so let's go down that.
And I think a lot of times the courts get involved in those as well.
Yeah,
I mean, that would
I
be.
think we're trying to
It's all
avoid
part of
that.
it, yeah.
Maybe that's something to just include in the local committee consideration. What's the charter committee formula? What are, places that have done congressional districts right? How do they do
Well,
it?
That's a question.
Does that give you enough guidance? So it's kind of the middle one and the last one as, to study, to
so
learn.
come back with, the
Yeah.
state charter committee, that is a very specific thing. I was just trying to pull it up really quick and I didn't get that while we were talking, but it's a very specific item, so we,
Okay, so
yeah, we can
I'd
pull
like to
that up
read it
very
and look at
easily.
it then. I
Yeah.
guess I'm not.
We've got a memo on that. You guys got it a couple of years ago.
A couple years
Talking about.
I mean, we got a few minutes here. Do you want to just, I mean, are you saying like you could just pull it up right now and put it on the screen?
So while Steve looks, okay, Steve's gonna look for it real quick. The other thing we'll do a little bit more research on or come back with more specifics is how that civic assembly was very specifically formed and how that could apply to this
Mhm.
process here. And then,
I mean, one thing about this is, the citizens assembly process. They randomly selected 12,000 households and then mailed. So it's,
it's like an invitation to.
it was an invitation. So I mean, for us, if we didn't invite every single household, there'd be a lot of people who were pretty irritated. And then if we're gonna invite every single household, that is a really expensive mailer, for us to.
But then a lot of applications to process, or unless
And then-
that's randomly selected
And then
through,
we would have to use Steve's voting machines vote tallying machines to process all the paperwork.
So this, ORS that we referenced in sub 3, all members of the committee must be electors of the county. No member shall be engaged directly or indirectly in any business with the county that is consistent with the conscientious performance of duties of members of committee. An initial appointment or appointment to fill a vacancy is made by delivering to the county clerk written notice. That could be pretty much anything that you would deliver to me. Let's see, I want to find more
yeah, I
detail.
can't find it. There's a specific list of, I think that's what David's wrote, yeah. Not showing it that. So there is a specific thing. I think Dave's grabbing it really quick.
You went to get his memo.
Yeah.
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Your memo.
Yeah.
And while they're doing that, do you want to wait on the decision of May or November based off of maybe how the committee selection process?
Well, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, sortation process is gonna take a while.
so as I say, May comes before November, either falls in place for May or doesn't. Is there any resistance to May?
I prefer May. I just think
Yeah.
it's nice to let people
We're aiming
know
for May.
if they're gonna think about running, where they live and,
So yeah, that's one of the considerations for May is the final deadline for the district maps for the ballot measures, February 27th. And the final deadline for a candidate filing is after that. It starts in September, but they can always change their filing. So there'll be 4 of the 5 positions. I think they're right now labeled position 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, or that's what they will be with, I think, position 1, 3, 4, and 5 on the May ballot. And so if the district maps come out, there'll be a time, so a candidate can only file for one of those positions. They can't file for multiple positions. So there would be a period of time between when the ballot measure map, and also it will happen in the county commission meeting very publicly about how those maps are fleshing out and the numbering of those positions before the final deadline of the May. So it would allow candidates to maybe strategically think about the position that they want to file. So that would be, I would say, the advantage to May, the advantage to members, it gives staff more time and commissioners more time through the process of it. Okay. So it says in all counties, we'll let Dave confirm this, for the charter committee members. The majority of the county court is entitled to appoint 4 members of the committee. The majority of the state senators and state representatives is entitled to appoint 4 additional members. And a majority consisting of at least 5 of those persons appointed under the courts and the state senators and state representatives are entitled to appoint 1 additional member. For a total of 9. Is that what you? Okay, so the VOCC appoints 4 members, state senators, state representatives representing the county appoint 4 members. And then that whole group gets to appoint 1 more member for a total of 9.
So the appointees select a member.
Yes, right, yes.
So that'll be like 2 stages.
And I did those selection processes can happen through
Sortation
application.
process of stages 2.
Like the commissioners could look, so one of the examples of another, it was in Lane County, where they received applications, and then from those applications, the commissioners selected, they each had a proportion amount to select from those applications, and then that group that was selected an additional amount. Now, I'll say that their maps did not pass in the electoral, not saying that has anything to do with the selection process, but their maps.
Well, we had 2006 and it didn't pass here too, so I mean, this is just.
Over the charter, whole package that they.
so we're talking here 9, Dave? Well, yeah, here's just 9. So we actually have 8 representatives and reps and senators that are in Deschutes County. So they have to work it out between themselves to get the 4.
That's the idea, yeah.
Yeah, and we would have to decide
You 3 would have to work out your.
how we want to do
Okay.
our 4. I mean, I would prefer for us to have 3 and each of us get 1. Then.
Well, that's interesting. At least it's an odd number. That works. Strange way. I was thinking like, oh, each one of the reps and the senators would have 1, so that's 9 plus 4, and yeah.
I mean, we could basically give each of us 1 for, among the board appointments. We could give we could give. When you think about the legislators, kind of based on population, right? You got a piece of Deschutes County, not to pick on Mark Owens, but you a little piece of Deschutes County with a few hundred people in it. Maybe he doesn't get one. He doesn't get to pick one himself. He gets to kind of team up with somebody.
But you just said we only get one each, so that's 3 + 8 is 11.
Well, we can give more to legislators then.
So we're not
Or we can
required
let
to
the committee
follow
themselves pick more people.
because it's not a
Yeah.
charter.
No requirement, just an example of,
Yep.
another example of to consider. And
But even if
you
we
could
say
take
we're
that
good
as
on this
adaptive.
path, it's not a hard requirement. We're not going down.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Just to, that modified use, that
I mean, at the end of the game, you're hoping, I think, that you get a pretty reasonable, fair representation from that committee and what they push forward to you, that you folks are in agreement and you push it out to the voters and the voters decide, and there's hopefully not a whole lot of politics associated with it, but maybe that's wishful thinking,
It might be, yeah. But that's the goal. I mean, that's why we're starting the process.
Okay, well, it looks like they left the number 9. So, all right.
Well, as I say, now I want to go back about this sortation process and learn, but, they're really that much overhead, you can only mail or whatever.
I mean,
I'm not
if we don't want
thousands of dollars.
If we don't want to mail to every single household in the county, just publicize it through the media, social media, and trust that people who aren't hiding under rocks are gonna find out about it somehow.
Yeah, well, as I say, just think it through a little bit. That's why I hadn't really thought about it. It's just an idea. Then we saw a process happen and they're asking us to, stay engaged and do something else. And I thought, hey, maybe this is something else.
No, but I do think that,
So I just say,
the idea of trying to get a representative sample of people from across the community, the way that they did that was very, I think, very thoughtful.
You could do a process of an open application, hit a wide variety of outlets to publicize that, and then use the selection criteria that they used for that civic assembly as a way to narrow the applications down.
yeah, as I say, I mean, I'm just bringing it up here today. They're lots of horsepower and energy in that one. So I just like to, now that it's been mentioned in a meeting like this, let's ask them, what does that look like from your point?
Yeah, we can ask them
Which-
what their capacity is to.
How much they
undertake the
charge us, because they
timeline.
want us to pay for it anyway.
Exactly, I'm just saying, but
Yeah.
capacity, timeline, and cost
Yeah.
are the 3 key factors we can explore with them.
Mhm. Just to learn more. And, yeah, I mean, so there's a path in here for the, appointment of the structure of the charter committee as presented that we could maybe adapt and give them out too. So we have multiple options there.
Do you want staff to propose options for the local appointments, or maybe just bring a list of different electeds who could potentially be in that? How detailed do you want that local appointment criteria to look?
I would love to see options. I would love to have this be one of them, one of a number of options.
The state charter or the local appointment, or a hybrid thereof?
The charter be one example of how you could do a local formula, basically, like, a couple of different formulas. One other thought, I went to congressional districting. One other thought would be, sometimes a state legislator or someone, some other office is, they don't finish out their term and you need to do an appointment process. And, it seems like sometimes they come up with, formulas or processes to do appointments as well. And, maybe there's something to be learned from looking at like appointment committees.
Okay, so my takeaways here are to look at the civic assembly and get some details on the timeline, the cost and capacity. Look at, present some options on a local appointment, potentially based off of the state charter committee, potentially based off of vacated elected seats already, or a combination of what a local appointments would look like from our current makeup of elected officials within the county.
That sounds like the domain that we were talking about.
That's a couple.
Yeah.
There's probably even, the categories you listed here in this local appointments box. Cities, elected officials, political parties. Those are interesting kind of ingredients for a formula too.
Yeah, I was thinking maybe a couple different options under the appointments, the local appointments. Kind of start with a foundation from the state charter appointments, but also an option or two within that local appointments that maybe is a little bit different from the state charter appointments.
Yeah.
Okay.
I would hope the end result would be that we actually would have representation from more areas in the county than less. So I think that's really important.
Geographic.
Yes, geographically,
Yeah.
yes, that's
Good.
very critical. However, you can massage whatever you're doing.
I think that's always been part of our conversation as well, even when these committees meet, to make sure that they meet representatively around the county and not just in one location too. Okay, and then do we want to leave the May to November still up in the air bit based off of the selection process?
I still think we can do May.
May.
So what,
I think we see when we can do a good job and work from there.
I can come back before you the week of April 14th would be the earliest I could come back, so either the 14th or the 16th meeting to talk about.
April 14th is AOC.
So definitely April
We'll see you on the
16th.
16th.
So we'll plan April 16th for.
That's when you'll be back.
Okay,
So we'll just go to
and we don't need a motion about the committee. No, okay, great.
That's good. And then after that, in fairly short order, we'll get into that and talk about what facilitation might look like. Is that will staff facilitate the committee? Will the chair facilitate it? Will we hire a facilitator? And then we'll kind of take this incrementally. That'll be the next step. And then the step after that will be, what is the charge? And then what is the charter? Excuse me, what does the public input look like? So this will be, we'll continue to touch base with the board every couple of weeks over the next couple of months as we see clarity from the board, so we can launch this process time for 2026. Maybe for May, and yes, if it's November, then that'll be the fallback. Great.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that's it for our published agenda today. Other items.
Okay, I'll just stay up here.
Yeah, welcome back. I was able to travel to Salem Friday and sat in front of the Joint Committee on Information Management Technology. There was like nobody else in the whole Capitol, but it was well attended. Representative. Oh, I can't read. Here we go. Nancy Nathanson was the chair. She's a co-chair of it. She was there though, and she really ran a good meeting, got very engaged, and then Senator Manning was there. He's public safety, and he was very engaged in the public safety radios and next gen 911 and the state communications interoperability plan. That we'll represent. So it's other duty representing Association of Oregon Counties when I do that.
Just mention that there was a coordinated homeless response office board meeting and a regional housing council meeting this evening. Right.
Okay, and I did go to the Redmond Managed Camp meeting. They changed it. And it was Friday morning. And it looks like that camp is projected to open in October of 2025. So working out the details.
There, I mean, the focus of the meeting was an MOU, right? Was there some decent progress?
It seems to be progress. You know, the timeline, the funding, seems like what's really going on. Natalie was there for the meeting part of it. And yeah, people were concerned with the cost, but then the cost is we can't do the land exchange. So let's put some dollars on that. You know, and is there anybody in the community that will actually be willing to help us with the cost of the project, such as the gravel, etc. So we brought up those ideas, storage boxes, and went through a lot of little details. So I thought it was a pretty good meeting.
One other note, so tomorrow evening, La Pine Chamber annual awards banquet, or whatever, so that I have it down for 4 o'clock, I'm not sure if it starts at 4. I'll be there tomorrow. And chamber.
Yeah, I could say, I would also mention that, tomorrow midday, there's a public health advisory board meeting that I'm not gonna be able to go to because I'm gonna go with the kids that are event. And, so if anyone is interested in popping in for a public health advisory board meeting, you're very welcome.
I've got a scheduled event midday tomorrow.
And there's the visitors, Central Oregon Visitors is tomorrow afternoon in Sun River. And I'm actually going to Salem tomorrow because I listened to the weather forecast last week and that was a mistake. Should have gone on last Wednesday. So, but I'm going tomorrow regarding the Terrebonne sanitation project that asked. So Kristen's going with me. So, and then I've got a couple other things that we're going to be working on in the buildings. So hopefully it won't be last Wednesday's weather tomorrow.
Commissioner, I was.
And you can't go to that one either, right?
I can't, I'll be at the LIPSIC, the local public safety coordinating council. That's at the same time. Robert Tintel, our CFO, will be there.
Okay.
Because they're gonna be talking about the budget. So
Okay.
that'll be important that he's there. I was looking at my notes as Commissioner DeBonne, you mentioned AOC. Did you mention the board retreat? Is that what you mentioned?
No, the meeting next on the
Oh, that's
14th.
on the 14th. Okay,
And then the
so
board retreat is in Sisters.
It's
in
sisters,
June.
so we're pleased to, no, I mean,
We're gonna get some TRT, right?
post that in,
Yeah.
right? We will benefit from that. So.
Whereas the city of Sisters will.
Yes,
This is,
Sisters
oh,
will.
that's true.
We should have moved them out to Black Butte. Never got the money.
So that means we won't likely have a board meeting on Monday, June 2nd, as I understand it. Likely a majority of commissioners may be attending
Okay,
or
no.
part of that, the Association of Oregon Counties Board Retreat. in Sisters.
I was just gonna go for the dinner one of the nights, but so I'm available for that one.
Well, and yeah, I mean, if it's crucial that we have a meeting, we should, you know, if there's agenda items that pop up, let's look at them.
We can certainly.
But yeah, we usually
can
work around
it.
it at least.
For the Wednesday
Yeah.
after, we can accommodate it, that's for changes, great. But we do have one other topic at the staff level that Jen is here for, regarding service partner, so.
Yes, so last Monday, Commissioner Dare was in communication with Shepherd's House Ministry about potentially becoming a service partner. I had a conversation with Jerry Cabling about that and explained, you know, there was a criteria that was established back in 2013, so I sent him that. Let me just back up a little bit. As you know, this coming Wednesday, so in 2 days from now, I'm coming before you for the video lottery fund allocation where the service partners and our special project grant funding are considered for the fiscal year 26. So I'm trying to work with Jerry to speed up his request for this service partner grant potential opportunity. So I did ask them, Shepherd's House Ministry, to put something in writing for how they would meet that criteria for service partners. So they did. I sent that all to you on Friday afternoon. And then I said, potentially, depending on how this conversation went today, I could get him to submit a grant application tomorrow to be considered for Wednesday's video lottery fund allocation. So there's a request to be a service partner, a service partner, potential consideration under a video lottery fund allocation. There's also special projects, grants that we offer under there as well. So I will turn it over to you for consideration, for discussion. I did pull figures about how much they've received from us in the past, if you want some of those numbers. But and at this time, I have no specific grant funding request from them. However, they're looking, and in the last couple of weeks, they are looking at, from not receiving federal grant funding, that they thought they were gonna see about a little over $400,000 budget shortfall.
How much have they received?
So they received a total of, between 2020 and 2022, they received three discretionary grants in the total of $6,752. And then in November 2024, they received $225,000 ARPA funding for Abby's house. And in November 2021, they received that was actually awarded April 2022. They received $300,000 in ARPA funds for the Redmond kitchen reno. All of that totals $531,752 between April of 2020 through November of 2024.
Sorry, could you repeat that number for the kitchen?
Yeah, the Redmond kitchen renovation was $300,000, and that was awarded in April of 2022.
And that Abby's program for women and children, I do believe that they've been successful in pretty much finishing that project. So, which is really such a need. So I really, they had a mission and they really worked hard to accomplish it.
Something, did you say the total was 700 something?
No, 531,752. Of that, 525,000 was in ARPA funds for those two projects, and then 6,752 in discretionary grants for 3 separate grants. The last discretionary grant they received was in February 2022, so it's been a while.
Jared just came on board with them not pretty recently.
I guess I'll say, I think Shepherd's House is a great organization. I'm really glad that in the last few years, they have wanted to engage more with local governments. I mean, there was a time 3 or 4 years ago when we were first having ARPA discussions, when they just said, we don't do government grants. So
It was actually the other way around. I was told when I first came here that they couldn't get grant funding because they were part of a religion, and then we started granting them money. So it was actually, it was like the other side of the story, and their work is phenomenal. So.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's the other side of the story. They said, they told me we don't do government grants for those reasons. Great organization. I'm glad that they're interested in engaging with us. I think that they are, it would be a very worthwhile place to put some of our lottery funds. In terms of process, we have not added a new service partner in over 10 years. We've brought a couple of organizations, through the special projects category to consider as service partners, and haven't moved to make any of them service partners yet. So while I think Shepherd's House is great and I want to support them, my suggestion would be that we put them in the queue as a special project this year, and consider making them a service partner at a later time.
I'd like to just discuss them on Wednesday, when it's on our agenda, right? We can bring them up. Do we have to say today that yes, we'd like to have them discussed on Wednesday?
So do you want them to put in a grant request? That's where I'm at. I haven't asked them. So we don't do an open invitation for grant requests for video lottery funds. Historically, those who have been funded in the past submit a proposal for, but it's not an open application process at this juncture for video lottery funds. So I could go back to them and ask them to submit the grant application. There have been, I don't know what the guidance was before I started doing this, but historically, the special projects and the service partners have asked for grants within a certain framework of costs. So I would say if you want to consider a specific grant proposal from them for a specific project, which is in line with our special projects grants and in line with our service partner grant request for fiscal year 2026, all of those partners have submitted a grant proposal for a specific project and outlined kind of some financials and what they're asking for. And within a framework, I don't think anyone has asked for, excepting one partner, they stick around somewhere between $15,000 and $45,000 dollars. So if there's some framework that you want me to give them to submit a grant proposal to put together tomorrow to be considered in the package, I can do that, and you can determine if you'd like to grant them allocations, and then if so, would you like to grant them in the service partner funds or the special projects funds onwards?
I'd like them to submit a grant, I mean, no more than like, tell them, yeah, maybe 40,000, but we can't make up the 400,000 that they're short.
I had just a management of expectations on
Right.
historically what we have granted out of these funds,
Yeah.
which area, how much funds are available and how much funds are being asked for. So he has a very good sense of that, but I'm happy to put commissioners are willing to consider a grant proposal up to $40,000 for a specific project. Can you submit a one-pager on what that would be? Is that kind of where we're?
Is that about what other organizations?
So I would have to check. So health services, it's kind of a managed twofold. The health services manages, she gets all of the service partner proposals and then gives them to me, and then I do all the back end admin for that. So I'm not sure what she specifically tells them, but I have a format from them for the service partners. It's a little bit different grant proposal. For the special projects, I sent that out and said, last year you submitted this, or you were awarded a special projects grant. If you are interested in asking for funds again, please submit, a one pager, someone a little bit longer, but a one pager on your project and what you'd like to ask for this round. So that's my communications. I'm not sure of the exact communications for the service partners, but as you saw, maybe if you looked in your binders, but there's this, a little bit separate format for the special service partners. The format is not, it won't impact whether or not you grant them service partner funds, special project funds, or funds at all, but I can kind of go off of just make it easier, the special projects, just give us a one pager and include these details. Commissioners are asking that you make your grant request no more than X amount of dollars. They have very little time to turn it around. He is expecting, I did let him know that if, per this conversation, if the commissioners want to entertain a grant request, I'd be asking this of him to get it to me by CFP tomorrow.
So this is our video lottery dollars. This is one-time funds, most flexible dollars we have. There's been kind of a, statewide review of where these dollars go by counties, and they go everywhere. So it really is a great pool of money to be able to invest in good things that happen. Shepherd's House is a wonderful service provider, but Bethlehem Inn was our homeless outreach and advocacy group, and now Shepherd's House is building up their capacity, and we're still not even turning the corner on being able to ask people not to be on the east side of Redmond. Talking about this fall, we'll maybe get the camp going, but we're really not asking everybody to go, just people on the county land. So I'm just saying, I'm really getting frustrated with how much we're spending on homeless services and watching it grow still, which is a policy choice for all of us to make. But yeah, Shepherd's House is a wonderful group, and sounds like there'll be support for them, but we just keep spending money. Economic development, remember, traded sector. EDCO, Ready, SLED, Sisters, economic development efforts, traded sector, absolutely support that. And I would always think of it as a higher priority so we can create a job, so somebody can have a stable opportunity for a paycheck, some health care, and moving forward in the world.
I have another commitment. I would
So
support-
we have majority
I
commission
would
support.
submit a
the-
proposal
Okay.
up to 40,000.
Up to 40, okay.
Thank you.
And Commissioner, that's for Commissioner Jarrett, that's for your line.
Yeah, Okay,
Okay, all right, thank you.
Anything
Thank you
else?
so much.
Any other items?
talking about the homeless, I will put it into the record. Since I can't get Deschutes County's appointed head count, Lane County's last year was 2,100. I just heard from the commissioner, it's now over 4,800. So, yeah. It's gonna be interesting when we hear ours.
Okay, so, looks like we're all set, meeting adjourned.
Happy Monday.
Wonderful.